What is up, team? Killchain here. PTR testing has officially dropped for our first look at the first two bosses of the Aberrus 10.1 raid. Now obviously everyone gets their scaling of the gear respectively to be able to test out the mechanics properly, regardless of what our R level is actually on the PTR. So perfect opportunity to even just copy some random ult that you have or instantly create any particular character to get you in there and get testing at a relevant R level. Now, today we get to check out Kazzara the Hellforged, the first boss of that raid. So, kicking it off, we have the new and improved Dragon Frontal Cone ability that's sort of creeping its way in with world bosses in Dragon Isles, as well as Razageth is the most notable one. A frontal line beam. Now, very easy to strafe out of because the beam's line is quite rigid and pretty small in terms of a frontal cone. However, very deadly if caught within it. Now, this will occur every 100 energy, and it does seemingly appear to be baitable by ranged DPS in some capacity. But regardless, big old note for everyone, even as tanks, you definitely don't want to stand in the beam. And for the most part, we noticed our Pug raid pretty much all picked up on that instantly because we're so used to it from Razageth. So it was almost like, yeah, pretty much all muscle memory for people to avoid the beam in that regard. Periodically throughout the fight, Kazzara will shed her armor, exposing more of her infernal heart. This will happen at 70%, 50%, and 30% health, and each time the infernal heart's pulsing small shadow flame damage of around 30k, that'll actually pulse quicker. So it's not that it does more damage over time, but it pulses quickly over time. So starting out at every 4 seconds and hastening with each armor threshold shed. When her armor does shatter, the Hellsteel fragments will rain down with a small radius, 4-yard radius around where they drop, so your typical don't stand in the swirly bad stuff, right? She also casts Wings of Extinction. Now this will be a knockback very, very similar to Sludge Fist from Castle Nathria. So here's where you obviously need positioning in mind to make sure you don't get knocked back into the core main component of the fight, which will be the Dread Rifts. Now, these Dread Rifts will increase in number on every time it marks a bunch of people for each shattered armor that has already happened. So obviously by 30%, you're getting maybe 8 people marked instead of 5. You get the idea, so it increases over time. And marked players will have 5 seconds to position their rift, and then it will drop the rift on the floor. Now, your typical bad stuff on the ground, right? The rift, don't stand in it, obvious. However, these rifts will also spew out another mechanic called Rays of Anguish. Now, these rays will basically be like a ball that will hunt down players and, you know, try and beam them with death energy, essentially. And yeah, it will hunt down players and it will obviously fixate on whoever it happens to randomly pick. And it will be their job to kite them through the rift. It doesn't need to be the same rift it spawns out of, just any old rift. And upon doing so, the relatively small rift size will then turn into a bigger pool of nope, of Shadow Flame patch on the ground. This will serve as a bit of a restrictive nature in terms of a sort of a soften rage slash a limiting factor when it comes to positioning and moving around the play space. So important to keep that in mind there. And lastly, we obviously have the bog standard tanking mechanic that never changes ever, a tank swap, right? So Terror Claws, a big old bunch of damage, and it will increase the damage by the next Terror Claws done by 200%, and if it's done within 25 seconds. So this is clearly obviously the tank swap mechanic from there. And that's a fight, quite fun and vibrant, very shadow flaming. The boss itself obviously looks quite badass, and the tuning felt quite easy, honestly, as we were able to just have a ragtag bunch of people immediately jump in there, and we were intentionally wiping within 2 to 5% sort of thing to get to go and repeat it over and over. But for a very introductory encounter, quite fun and good start to the raid for sure. So stay tuned over the next few days. We have our Molgoth encounter as well. And I do appreciate your time. If you want to go the extra mile, by all means, consider subscribing or throwing a like at the video. It helps something to do with the algorithm, blah, blah, blah. Much appreciated. Take care. Peace.